Good morning, Vande Matram. Welcome all of you to this session of Savitri summarization. Here we are on the third day, third day to discuss the yoga of the king, the yoga of the soul's release. It is of course a great topic. Um, you know, each line is a mantra in Savitri. To read Savitri is to do my yoga, and of course we are going to have a deep outlook into this chapter, into Savitri. During the process of our summarization, so called, we have analyzing through the heading of the Savitri summarization. It is coming on the book 1, Canto 3. The top chapter is the book of the yoga, the yoga of the king, the yoga of the soul's release. So this is the topic of discussion for right now. We know already two cantos we have covered up, that is a symbol done, how the creation rose, and of course the arising of Savitri. Savitri to awoke among the Savitri tribes. So awakening of Savitri, and of course by the process of our adventure we have seen the issue. 12 sweet wings months are given to him and her, this day returning Satyavan must die. So we are going to the next term, the very next one. We are going to have book 3, Canto 1, the yoga of the king, the yoga of the soul's release. Here in this topic we are going to analyze. Of course we will have a brief idea on who really this king is, yoga of the king. So yoga, already we know who this king is, King Asapati. Of course it has been described as the Asapati, the leader of men, the lord of life. So we are going to discuss, know little bit on his yoga, and of course his adventure, and finally we will find the conclusion. In the concluding session we will find the yoga of the soul's release. So the soul will be released from this ignorance, from the bondage of this mind, life and body, how it is released. That is the topic of discussion right now. We are going to know. It is a very interesting topic, because two parts when we analyze, one is the yoga of the king and the second part is yoga of the Savitri. Savitri we know, the divine mother herself, we know our mother, representing and of course she is Savitri, and Asapati is really our Mahayogi Sri Aurobindo. So we will know a little bit how the soul is giving released. That is the major focus we are going to focusing upon. Still in the course on this book 1, Canto 3, Savitri's birth in this world was in response to the aspiration of the earth. Already we have heard the term, a world's desire compelled her mortal birth. That is the very first line of Savitri we have seen. A world's desire compelled her mortal birth. Then this birth, Savitri's birth in this world, where she has taken birth in this world, was in response to the aspiration of the earth, voiced through Asapati. So everything the earth aspired, and this voice was voiced through Asapati. So who really this Asapati? If it is asked the question, already I have told you, the leader of men and the lord of life. Leader of men, he is representative of the human world. He is the leader of men, and of course the lord of life. It was he who embodied the call of humanity, and of course succeeded in bringing down savior grace in the form of his daughter Savitri. So here two identity we get, and of course we know the identification of two. One is King Asapati and the second is Savitri. Savitri, of course, the savior grace has have been described, because she has to lift up the burdened race to its divinity's heights, and she is daughter of Asapati. Asapati is really the Lord of life and the leader of men. So entire aspiration as aspired by the entire earth that has been voiced through the voice of King Ashwapati, and for this eradication of this entire struggle, puzzle, and of course helplessness of the entire humanity, Sri Aurobindo or King Ashwapati is actually this is instrumental in the descent of great world mother, that is Savitri Aditi, who had never came down. Initially, we have seen and discussed the might of all that never yet came down. So this might of all that never yet came down, she is manifest here, and of course our descent into this earthly embodiment is through only King Ashwapati, and Savitri has come down into this earth through the through with, as his daughter Savitri. Again, we'll go for the next phase, how really it is working. Ashwapati himself was no ordinary mortal, no ordinary mortal, but usually, superficially, externally, we feel he is moving, he is playing, he has gone for the ordinary life, and of course, as human being. But the thing is that his divinity is being wrapped up. He has wrapped up, of course, he has left behind all his sincerity, his serenity, his divinity, eternity, and immortality, because he had to come down, descend down on earth in order to lift this human race to its divinity's heights. So this is the purpose, and it is here really truly speaking the truth. It is Ashwapati actually himself was no ordinary mortal, resigned to the pace and will of the evolutionary nature. The evolution, knowingly or unknowingly, we are in the process of evolution, but evolution, as we know, it is a slow process. And here Sri Aurobindo quotes beautifully in the you see, he was not at all a ordinary mortal, and ordinary mortal whose characteristic is to resign to the pace and will of the evolutionary nature. But he was totally different. He knows the truth. He knows his greatness. He knows his magnanimity. So he was not in a position. Actually, he did not bend his savior head. He never bent. He knew, and of course he was doing his mission. He knew the mission and vision for what really he is here. So he was not actually resign. He did not resign to the pace and will of the evolutionary law. Pace is very slow. Will, okay, we have to wait as per the evolutionary nature. Everything will happen. Naturally, he did not at all resign to. He was a special being. Then, if he is not ordinary being, then how he is really? You can find the picture as summarized in Savitri, Book 1, Canto 3. He was a special being assigned with the specific task of preparing struggling humanity for the next step in Godward evolution. To process evolution always upward, it is towards the, it is of course a Godward evolution. But problem is that the very problem where it is lying really, the it is a slow process. The humanity is not at all assisting, not interested in go in in the swift process of evolution. So evolutionary process has been slowed down. Actually, Ashwapati is a special being who is preparing this struggling humanity. Humanity is struggling but not interested to get freed, because he is happy with his own attitude and all. So, in this Sri Ashwapati, the role of Ashwapati is to prepare this struggling humanity for the next step in Godward evolution. Nobody knows how many births have been passed, and here we are on this earth, and how many again it will we have to pass on. That is actually not known outwardly. He over all the trappings of the common humanity. We see common humanity, whatever we bear and whatever really normally people the humanity is bearing. He had that those all those embodiments, but actually he was separate. But inwardly, outwardly, he was human to the vision, but inwardly, he was conscious of his higher origin. Inwardly, he was conscious of his higher origin, his role, the powers that are preparing for being in the hour of manifestation. He knows his role. He is well conscious of his mission and vision for what he is coming, what is his role, what he has to do. Everything is totally crystal clear before him, but actually he is hiding. Outwardly, he is a human being like us, moving, talking, meditating, and all. Everything is there. He is a yogi, but inwardly he is totally separate, totally different. It is the specific, and of course special characteristic with Ashwapati. Now itself we will try to quote few lines, of course, from Savitri, as we have seen very interestingly. Sri Aurobindo quotes very interesting line. A world's desire compelled her birth, mortal birth. So, one in the front of the immemorial quest, protagonist of the mysterious play in which the unknown pursues himself through forms. Again, describing Ashwapati, we have seen a colonist from immortality, a pointing beam on Earth's uncertain roads, his birth held up a symbol and a sign. A colonist from immortality, not of this earthly arena, a colonist from immortality. This world is his colony. So, a pointing beam on the Earth's uncertain roads. Earth's roads are uncertain, but he is a pointing beam on Earth's uncertain road. His birth held up a symbol and a sign. So against here in the course, his human self was like a translucent cloak. Translucent cloak. Everything is clearly visible. Light can penetrate. Against your window writes, although consenting to mortal ignorance, already we have seen he is representing his the leader, of course, of this struggling humanity, preparing them for the evolutionary Godward evolution he is interested in and he is doing. So, although consenting to mortal ignorance, here in this earth, the ignorance we know, different type of ignorance, that is actually mortal ignorance. He has consented to, but actually he is well aware of. But his knowledge shared the light ineffable. His knowledge shared the light ineffable, but actually outwardly he has consenting to the mortal ignorance. He bore the stamp of mighty memories. It's actually stamp of mighty memories, not the ordinary memories that we have remember. Most of the time, yesterday, whatever the step we have taken, today we have forgotten. But very limited people actually jatas smaro, they known. Very limited people are there, very for a very short time, they do remember and recall. His days were a long growth to the Supreme. His days were a long growth to the Supreme. Again, Sri Aurobindo quotes, his soul lived as eternity's delegate. His soul lived as the eternity's delegate. His mind was like a fire assailing heaven. His will, a hunter in the trials of light. Just imagine who really he was. Again, we have known and we have seen him. And at last, the student quotes here, a spirit that is a flame of God abides, a fiery portion of the wonderful. Just imagine how the spirit has been described. Again, Sri Aurobindo quotes, at last the traveler on the paths of time, in the paths of time, arrives at the frontier of eternity. He is Ashwapati, he is Sri Aurobindo, for whom actually Sri Aurobindo in as a protagonist, but actually he describes in his own way what really is the process of sadhana and the progress of sadhana. Against Aurobindo quotes, all in him turns to spirit vastnesses, not to the vastness of so-called human vastness. It is very much limited. His soul breaks out to join the oversoul. His soul breaks out to join the oversoul. His life is oceaned by that super life. He has drunk from the breast of the mother of the worlds. This is the characteristic, this is the speciality that is we can find in him. So, Sri Aurobindo, again, we can go a little bit forward, a little bit we can see beautiful line. The cosmic worker set his sacred hand. The cosmic worker set his secret hand to turn this vile mud engine to heaven use. Again, we can see it built the soul into a statued God. It built his soul into a statued God. Just imagine how he was being prepared. A seer was born, a shining guest of time, for whom mind's limiting firmament ceased above. A seer was born, a shining guest of time, for him mind's limiting firmament ceased above. There was actually mind could not work over him, work on him. Again, The bounded mind became an boundless light, boundless light, the finite self mated with the infinity. His march now soared into the eagle's flight out of apprenticeship to ignorance. Just imagine the process and progress, how he was doing. Again, we can find something very beautifully. Freedom and empire called to him from on high. Freedom and empire called to him from on high. Above mind's twilight and a life's starlit night, there gleamed the dawn of a spiritual day. Most of the time we claim and we complain, of course, we claim that we are spiritual, leading the spiritual life, we are not married, staying in the ashram, doing the others' work, so. But thing is that here in the course where really this dawn of spiritual life begins, where the spiritual life really dawns. Above mind's twilight. Twilight means that buffer. Day is coming, going, and of course now evening is coming. That buffer, that there is no more influence of the brightness of the day or evening yet to start. So during that buffer, when the above the mind's twilight, the mind has nothing to do that time, and the life starlit night, life has enjoyed like anything. They are gleamed the dawn of a spiritual day. They are gleamed the dawn of a spiritual day. So here we are going a little bit forward a little bit. We'll try to move on how this focus, how this really this story, yoga on the soul's release is progressing. Sri Aurobindo tries to explain in this glorious chapter. He turned his being to the demands of the master of evolution. He turned his being to the demands of the master of evolution, set his movements in harmony with the workings of the higher cosmic spirit, in harmony, in balance, staying in balance with the cosmic spirit and the master of evolution. He was staying and grew into the conscious receptacles of the mighty forces of the supernatural. The mighty forces of the supernatural that was coming down, descending, and he was the receptacle that descended into him. The mighty forces of the supernatural were descending in him, and his receptacle was very fine, very nice. He was recepting. His wideness widened his being into embrace the universe. Just imagine in another portion, of course, in last chapter we have seen on mother, love in her was wider than the universe. The whole world could take refuge in her single heart. That we have seen here. We have seen he widened his being to embrace the universe. He widened his being to embrace the universe. So entire universe will take shelter in his being, in his arms. So he is getting widened into the consciousness. He struck out upwards across the firmaments of the mind and the firm bridge. He struck out across the firmaments of the mind. Struck out, he is moving up. Mind has no restriction or any bondage on him. And formed a bridge. Actually, see, there is a bridge. The work of the bridge, it is connecting the two shores here and there, this side and that side, so that man can cross easily through that. Just imagine when there was a river, there was nobody was there. He has to swim on, or somebody has to give a lift. Then actually you can find there was a boat inside, and sometimes there is difficulty in the deep night that the boater, the sailor or the boatsman may not be available. But later, if there is a permanent possibility of attaching to both sides through a bridge, then your chapter is closed, your problem is over. Like this, Sri Aurobindo is forming a bridge that it as it were between the physical universe and the divinity beyond. The bridge that is bridging 2 points. One is in physical universe, and the second one on the divinity beyond. In him, earth and heaven joined the hands. Just imagine what sort of soul he was, and with him, how his soul is going to be released from the bonds of ignorance and, of course, this inconscience. So, just imagine how we are and what is the real term. It is just a release of soul, not the permanent thing. There is transformation and all so many things, triple transformation, many ways we will see. But here, exactly see, in him earth and heaven joined hands. Again, he saw great changes taking place in himself, finding great and big changes as it is taking place in himself. and greater faculties of knowledge, power, sensations, and bliss, replacing the limited ones natural to mental man. So, two things are there. This man, these people, this mortal man, they are confined with the power, sensation, and bliss. Actually, it is with a higher man, but actually, man is actually ignorant. Actually, he is illiterate, and of course, staying on the bondage of ignorance, and of course, pain, suffering, and death, so called. But Osapati, he saw the greater changes taking place in himself, greater faculties of knowledge, power, sensations, and bliss. Greater power of knowledge, power, sensation, and bliss, replacing the limitations and the limits of the normal, ordinary human being means that is which is natural to mortal man. Again, all became open book to him. He could feel everything is becoming very much common and of course open book, so that anything he can as he wills, as he expects, anything can be done. Of course, he can read everything, know everything, and of course he can capitalize anything. Still in the course, while he was passing on, he was moving up. See, he could find the titans of the dark and the gods of the light who battled for his soul as for a costly prize. Just imagine how the great adventure was taking place, and for him, who will take him to their side? There will be victory for him. So there was a big battle between the gods of light and the titans of the darkness for his soul. Again, we have seen the humanity framed his movements less and less. A greater being saw a greater life, and humanity ceased to limit his pace. Humanity framed his movements less and less, and a greater being saw a greater world. Against your in the course beautifully in his about the God and all what is sitting. He saw the perfect in their starry homes. He saw the perfect in their starry homes. The perfect in their starry homes, they are of course supramental gods. In their starry homes, instead of worshipping these gods and following their principles and their principles, we are actually interested in worshipping the stars. Wearing the what? How were they wearing the glory of a deathless form? Their death never goes. Deathless form. Instead of following them, we are actually worshipping the death only. Len in the arms of the eternal, please. If you find them, your peace will be very much monumental, very much familiar with you. But actually, we are for peace. We are moving here and there, wrapped in the heartbeats of God ecstasy. Wrapped in the heartbeats of God ecstasy. Ecstasy we don't know, mere joy. That is also a half truth for us. He lived in the mystic place where the thought is born and will is nursed by an ethereal power. Just imagine how his adventure was there. While crossing towards your divinity sides and covering the paths, just imagine how it was glorified and magnanimously it has been described. Sri Aurobindo quotes beautifully. Will go for the next page. Each day was a spiritual romance, as if he was born into a bright new world. If you are in spiritual life, of course, you are adventuring in the spiritual track. You will find each day was a spiritual romance, and of course, as if he was born into a bright new world. Later we'll find something to cross on, to cover up. Still in the course, he experienced himself not only those immense intensities of the creative light, power, and the bliss, but also reactions and the pullbacks caused by the still unformed elements of the conscience, obscurity, and the inertia in the physical parts. There are two things, two feelings, two experiences. Here on the top, you can find the creative light, power, and bliss. Here, obscurity, of inconscience, and the inertia, those pools are there. In between, on a borderline, Sri Aurobindo, of course, Osapati is observing and seeing both these things. So again, we'll go find to him stood revealed the roots of the cosmos of the superconscient, roots of the cosmos in the superconscient, the fount of the divine desire from which the creation actually sprouted in seed. Everything he can see, how the cosmos is formed, how the cosmos and the is related to this in the superconscient, and the large lines of the process in which manifestation is pursuing its closed course. So everything he is taking, seeing in his naked eye, and he could be feel in a very bright manner, in widened manner, leaving out no part, however recalcitrant, and arrived at a firm, immovable status and the eternal spirit. So, seeing all, experiencing all, finding all, observing all. So, from that only he is trying to lift up and to statues of the eternal spirit. From this station above, the edge of nature, he reached to help the toiling world. He could see, he could experience, he could represent, and he knows the common problem of the humanity. So from there, from that height, seeing everything, he is interested in helping the toiling world, and help that really was all more effective because of his liberated condition, because his soul is freed now. He can able to see, he can able to grasp, he can able to help up to whom. After this getting liberated, he is interested to serve, of course, to help the suffering humanity, and the mastery he had acquired over the powers and energies of the greater nature. Already he is soul is freed, and he has the mastery over the powers and energies and the of the greater nature. So with this he can be able to help this suffering world and the suffering humanity as a whole. So again we'll go for couple of lines. We'll try to recite from Sri Aurobindo very interestingly. He knew the source from which his spirit came. Very interesting, very clear. He know, because if somebody asks about our identity, we'll feel our father is such and such, our own address is such and such. But thing is that he knew the source from which his spirit came. Movement was married to the immobile first. He plunged his roots into the infinity, plunged into the his roots into infinity. He based his life upon eternity. That is what the real thing. And Sri Aurobindo actually he had come to the point where really the things were taking change. Sri Aurobindo, very interesting line. Sri Aurobindo quotes, God found in nature, nature fulfilled in God. Already in him was seen that a task of power. Just imagine how the great liberation was taking place in this great Rishi, great yogi. So again, and inspired knowledge sat enthroned within. Inspired knowledge sat enthroned within, whose seconds illumined more than region's year. Just sure. His equal spirit gave its vast ascent, a poised serenity of tranquil strength, a wide, unshaken look on time's unrest. Not just imagine how his change is taking place in him. And going to the next paragraph and the next portion of our discussion, we find normally a deathless body and a divine name. And the bodiless, nameless that saw God born and tries to gain from the world's mind and soul a deathless body and a divine name. So we can find somewhere a beautiful thing every time, because in integral yoga silence plays a big role. How really this silence really plays here in the course, what really this silence is. Silence the notes of the Almighty's power. Silence the notes of the Almighty's power, the omniscient house and the immortal word, and the timeless and the still brooding force and the creative eye of eternity. That is the silence really. Sri Aurobindo quotes again beautifully while describing the life after getting liberation and all, how life is, and before liberation where we are staying in the ignorance, how life is really. Sri Aurobindo quotes, life now became a sure approach to God. Life now became a sure approach to God, existence a divine experiment, and cosmos the soul's opportunity. The world is a conception and a birth of spirit in matter into living forms. We have seen conception, inception, giving birth, mothers and all here are here with you, and you have also faced the gone through that sequence. But imagine how really it works. This world is a conception and a birth. This world is a conception and a birth of who? Ordinary child? No, of spirit in matter, of spirit in matter in living forms. Again, towards the end, we can see thus came his soul's release from ignorance, his mind and body's past spiritual change. Here, it is the concluding session. Of course, we can see here his illumined perception of the manifesting truth of the spirit, illumined perception of the manifesting truth of the spirit, and his will to promote and shape the evolutionary movement of the race in the moods of the vision stamped themselves indelibly in the life and the mind of men. So there is the possibility, and of course there is the chance, and that is the certainty with which we have to move forward. And finally, towards the end, Sri Aurobindo quotes here his daily thoughts. These daily thoughts looked up to the two and one. A wide God knowledge poured down from above. From above, a wide God knowledge poured down. A new and world knowledge brooded from within. Again, he grew one with a covered universe. His grasp surprised her mightiest energy springs. And again, we have seen the you course, a demigod shaping the lives of men, a one soul's ambition lifted up the race, a power worked, but none knew whence it came. In disguise, he was actually supporting all, he was shaping all, he was transfiguring all, but thing is, the power worked, but none knew how it came. Demigod. Against Aurobindo has been quoted a demigod shaping the lives of men, one soul's ambition lifted up the race, but none knew. The universal strengths were linked with his, and he drew energies from that transmute an age. He drew the energies that transmute an age immeasurably by the common loop. He made great dreams a mood for coming things. The transferring figuring power was found in him. Again, towards the end, we can find two greatest lines. So far, we have seen, of course, in here, every line is greatest. We find big lines, great lines, and spiritual lines, of course, packed with a mantra. So his walk through time outstripped the human stride. With the human stride, human pace, it is very difficult to move on. So after getting liberated with the liberated soul, his walk through time outstripped the human stride, lonely his days and splendid like the sun. Lonely his day and splendid like the sun, because nobody was there, nobody knows the truth, nobody knows what really he is doing, nobody is interested to move on. This is the scenario, real scenario with which actually he is moving on. So this is the great topic of discussion on yoga of the king and the yoga of the soul's release. We should know where really we are. If comparing these greatest gurus, biggest adventure, if really we match to some extent, it is only the release of the soul, not a transformation or a triple transformation, and a step towards perfection. If this is actually achieved and found within you, then definitely you are in a very bright time, with you are roaming with a very bright adventure. If not, try somewhere where you are and try to rectify and surrender at the divine's hand, and surrender to the divine mother. Bande Mataram.